Welcome to another in our Teach Us Something video series. I'm here today with my good friend Cam. Cam, we'll go ahead and start like we've started all the others. If you want to tell us who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All righty. Well, thank you for having me, Amelia. I'm Cam Wilde. I have multiple hats. I'm retired Air Force and a freelance graphic designer. I had been for a long time. I'm still kind of freelance, but with a partnership company called Leighton Moon. And I also am the executive director of our local economic development nonprofit, Alamogordo Main Street. And so wear multiple hats, a lot of it both Main Street and obviously Leighton Moon being a design agency deals with graphic design. And so that's the #1 passion, and that's what we're gonna hopefully go into today, later on.
Okay, awesome. Well, we can go into it right now. So,
Boy.
yeah, that leads right into our very next question.
Which
our
is?
only second question, really, which is, what do you want to teach us today?
I don't know if you'd say teach, but maybe provide some insight, a little bit of knowledge on specifically typography, and then if we have a little time, some other more fun stuff that I'm going to involve you with.
Okay.
And so yeah, just to preface it. And this is, kind of geared towards someone that maybe doesn't know anything at all about typography. And when I say typography, I mean fonts. And, what font is that? And, pulling down the little thing in Word that you get to pick the font, and everybody picks, Comic Sans or Papyrus to do their thing because it's so edgy and cool. And there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of folks, it's a little counterintuitive to me because being in graphic design, I see everything as being designed. Everything in the world that we interact with is designed. This pencil, somebody designed it. And so naturally that extends to fonts. Somebody or a team of somebodies sat down and designed each and every font, whether it was designed in the 1700s and it was metal type and then later on digitized, or whether it was made fresh today in digital format only and then maybe later into something physical. But somebody had to sit there and draw each and every little letter form, as we call them. And the challenge being is, you have your basic alphabet, upper and lowercase, you have numbers, you have all the symbols, the commas, the periods, all that. Plus you can get into other languages, the characters that are specialized to other languages. And really folks don't think about the fact that what a challenge that is for typographers and type designers to make all these different characters, sometimes in the hundreds, look like they all belong together and look like they're part of the same family. And a lot of times when folks just start out designing fonts, which there's a lot of very inexpensive software to be able to do that, digitize your handwriting or let you draw it yourself and output it as font software, basically, that's compatible with different things. There's a lot of tiny little subtle visual tricks that the high-end designers do to make that uniform type of look. And a lot of it's really counterintuitive. It's really crazy, and I've learned a lot more about it lately. And so just have this quick little kind of exercise on the screen to show how counterintuitive some of this stuff is. And it's kind of fun to me. Hopefully it's fun for you. It is definitely interesting. If you have mild to severe OCD, you may not want to see this because you'll see how crazy some of this stuff is that you think that can't be right, but it actually is. And so I'm gonna share a screen with you. Let me move this guy out of the way and we'll get right into it. this whole exercise applies to all kinds of typefaces, but this one happens to be Gotham black and Gotham bold down here. And what I've done is typed out some of these characters that we're gonna look at just to use as examples of how counterintuitive some of this stuff is on type design. And but what I've done is what's called outlining them. These are no longer editable. They're just the shapes, and I haven't altered these in any way. This is as they were designed. See, these are the live text, and so we can, you know, do whatever we want with those. But then all these characters is the same font. Huge. Is the same font, but with the outline, so we can kind of move them around a little bit. And I've set these at different colors so that we can see what's happening. And I've also set them to what's called multiply. And so picture it like these are on transparencies. And so when I overlap them, you can see through each one. So, and this little teaching session is based on in fact, the company that designed Gotham, which is again what we're looking at, came up with this nifty little exercise teaching typography, and I'm just totally, if I'm looking off to the side here, I'm kind of adapting what they taught. That's on the website typography.com, and that's Heffler and Company that designed this and came up with this little exercise to show different eccentricities on font design. So the first one is, you know, you have letters like C and T, which C is very curvy and T's are very straight. You know, the tops and the bottoms are really straight. Same with this B here, the H. And then of course, O, you got the curves. And so how do you match these up to look like they're in the same family? There's one little thing that you see a lot in amateur type designers, what they'll do, and it sticks out like a sore thumb to me, and but it's really subtle. And so I'm gonna zoom in here, and we're gonna get a closer look at this C and this T. And then I'm going to turn on some guides, and hopefully you'll be able to see them. They're real light blue lines right there. But you'll see when we get really close that a T matches up with that top guide and matches up with the bottom guide perfectly, rests right in there. But look at this C. It seems like it's too big. And that's on purpose. It's because if we had this C smaller like this, then visually it ends up looking too small whenever you start having it in words. It just looks too small. And so curves on a good type design, curves tend to extend above and below. I'm undoing here so we can get it back. There we go. Extend above and below straight letters. And it's just a really odd thing to think that you know, this line that this T is sitting on, the C is actually going down below it. And it's the same with the letter O and the tops of the, you know, if a font has a curvy top to it, an S and a bottom, that'll extend above and below the lines that the other straight letters follow. And so, but that also applies to letters that have these kind of wedge shapes. As they come up, you know, you see this letter A is sitting right on the bottom of this line, right on top of this bottom line, but then it extends above it just a tad, just a little bit. There's no real measurement. There's no real formula for this. It's all about what looks correct visually. And that's the thing that's so counterintuitive about these things, is because when you're building them, or, you know, as the designer sitting there making this font, the natural tendency is to make them match more closely, but it's all about what matches more optically, visually rather than optically. So you have to kind of break all these little rules just to make it look good and to make it look like these optical illusions of making this A look like it's the same size as a T. Another thing that they do is interesting, that these, in individual letters, these crossbars, this line in the middle here is exactly between the top and the bottom lines. And this crossbar looks pretty well like it's centered on that center line. But what we're gonna do here is we'll take this one, we'll put it on top, and we're gonna put it right on top, and then we're gonna rotate it to where the top B is upside down. So now we're rotating it. Now look what happened. This just shows that the bars crossing the middle of this B don't actually match up. I'm forgetting. Okay, the bar is actually a little bit tall. It's a little bit higher than the center. And again, that's for a really a good reason. To make it look centered, it has to be a little taller than center. And it has to do with the proportions of the B, the fact that this bowl right here is set in a little bit further than this bowl, and things like that. And again, it just goes back to, if you want it to look centered, you have to make it off center a little bit. Let's see. Same thing with the H. We don't even need guides for this. We'll put an H over the top and then rotate it around. And then you can see that the blue H is the one that's upright, and that bar is a little too high to be exact math proportionate, you know, in the middle. And again, that's just to, if it was exactly in the middle, it would just look optically, visually too low. And so yeah, do that. Let's see, what else do we have? This one's pretty obvious to me, but you know, when drawing an A, capital A, you know, you think this line right here, this horizontal line, needs to be right in the center. But we can just see just right now that it is way low, way below center line. And I'm gonna copy it, I'm gonna paste that right on top, and then we rotate it around. I mean, you can see how not center it is. It's really this white space that's more centered. And again, that's on purpose. And then another interesting one is, I'm gonna take, let's see, I'm gonna take this T, copy it, scoot it over, and then I'm gonna change the color real quick so we can see what's going on. So in this individual letter, it's all the same weight. This bar and this bar, the horizontal bar and the vertical bar, visually look to be the same fatness, the same width. But again, we'll turn this sideways and we'll stick this on top of this. Let me just move these over. Oh, I need to set this guy to multiply. There we go. Look how much fatter the yellow T, the vertical bar is compared to the top. And again, if the top was the same thickness, the horizontal was the same thickness as the vertical, it would probably look too top heavy. and it would look like it's going to tump over or something like that. And the same concept applies to round letters like an O as well. So this looks pretty consistent all the way around, especially when you zoom out. You know, you zoom out and this looks very, very, very donut-y, very consistent. But when you get down to it, we'll take this one, stick it right on top, and then we'll rotate it. Look at that huge difference between the top and the bottom. The top of the O and the bottom of the O is much, much thicker than the sides, which is really crazy to think that somebody, the Heffler and company who designed this, and other designers that do this stuff, really sit down and look very, very closely at the thickness of each part of this O to make sure that it's visually balanced, centered, and actually looks like it's consistent, even though it's not. I mean, look at that. That's a sideways O. You can really see the difference between the two now. And what else? Oh, this is a good one. I like this one. So I'm going to pull this A down. Okay. Letter A, very symmetrical, very centered. Everything is just kind of in its place. Never mind the height of it and all that kind of good stuff. Everything's just very, very, very even and uniform. So I'll do the same trick again, put this on top. But then now what I'm going to do is flip it. It's like flip it horizontally. So I'm going to reverse it. It's a reflection of itself. And then we're going to zoom in really close here to show that, look, the little peak of this is not actually centered. It's actually just, where is it? It's just to the right of center. So we're gonna, that's the middle of the letter, or just to the left actually, yeah, there we go. So this peak is just to the left of center of this little spot here. And it's just so weird to think that why not center it? And again, it just comes down to that visual balance, that if it was exactly centered, it would look off for whatever reason, all optical illusions. Another good one that the more inexperienced type designers may do is, you know, when they're designing these, they'll design an E and then they'll just chop off this bottom leg here to make an F. And really that's not a good move, because an F is a totally different letter. And to make them look like they belong together, they need to be adjusted in some way here. Let me get that. Okay, there we go. Look how different the F is. The F has a thicker top bar to it. The middle bar is much lower and doesn't stick out as far as the E does. And then that's for this very heavy weight. And then it kind of does a little bit different with the bold version. We'll do the same thing here. If I can get it on there. There we go. Oh, I need to set that to multiply. And you can see how different the pink F is to the blue E. It's lower. This one's sticking out further to the right. It's sticking out further to the right on top a little bit like that. And again, you could just take an E and cut off that bottom leg, and then you immediately have an F. But it just wouldn't look right. It wouldn't look like it's all proportional to each other as well. And that's the beauty of type design, is to me, is that all these little eccentricities that they have to put into the letters, so that individual letters look like they belong with other individual letters. Uh, what if you did it all mathematically and you made everything center and you made everything super uniform, then it kind of screams amateur, but it also just, it seems imbalanced when you put it all together. When you type your name out, or when you type a line of text out, the more letters you get kind of grouped together, the more out of whack it seems whenever all the individual letters are perfectly mathematically aligned. So anyway, I just find that super interesting. I find it really makes me respect type designers a lot more, to think all this thought and process goes into it. You know, when they're designing these, they look at this F and then they pair it up with an E, and then they pair it up with an A, and then they pair it up with an O, and they make tweaks depending on these combinations, so that whenever you look at it as an entire family, it looks it works well together. They all play well together. So anyway, that's what I want to teach everybody, that to respect your fonts, respect the folks that design them, and some of these take years to design by teams of people. Now, they're not working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week on them, but you know, they spend a lot of time and a lot of effort to make them beautiful, make them work well, and make them communicate the in the most effective manner, because that's really what it's all about, is communicating clearly. And so they want to make sure that whenever you use any combination of letters that they've designed out of the same font, that it's going to look good no matter where you put it, no matter how you use it, and it's going to make you look good, and that in turn makes them look good, of course. So anyway, going to websites like DaFont or other free sites, there's nothing wrong with that, but be aware that when you start getting into the really high quality, really carefully crafted, really thoughtful design fonts, they cost some money. And I've gotten fonts for my birthday. I've gotten fonts for Christmas. And so, yeah, it's kind of a nerdy thing. But when you're really getting, if you're an amateur designer and you're wanting to elevate your game, you know, really study letters and fonts and why they are the way they are, because after a while you train your eye to immediately see, you could say, flaws in them. There are certain fonts that have inherent character traits that make them quirky, but you need to know why that is, and you need to know whether or not what you're using this for, if this quirkiness is appropriate or not. So anyway, that's that piece. Do you have any questions, Amelia?
Well, yeah, actually, so that's all really cool. Like sincerely, I find it really kind of interesting, like all of these little bits that, like, I never in a million years would have guessed that A was just ever so slightly off center, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that that design approach for fonts is something that sprung up, I don't know, in response to just like designers trying to make something look right for our brains while we're looking at it? Or do you think that maybe it's something that came up from like imperfect letter presses and things that we had back in the day that were hand sculpted, and we kind of ended up with this now because there wasn't that pixel perfect precision?
Right. That's super good question. I think it's kind of a mix of both depending on the font. Although I tend to think it's because of your second assumption, and that one being that this was very intentional. At least on this font that we just demonstrated, it is super intentional. The quirkiness of the old metal type, the old wooden type, sure, there was some problems with those just due to wear and age and the medium they were working in. But these types of things were considered back then. This is let's see, Garamond, which folks use all the time. It's a very popular font. Let me see. It is, I'm looking at my little reference poster here. 1530 was when that was originally designed. And these types of visual cues were even considered back then. Maybe not to the extent and down to the pixel, like you said, as it is now, but the same concepts applied of weight, where weight distribution would be in a particular font. It's funny because sometimes slants and everything, sometimes designers use the terms, oh, it looks like it's going to tip over. Even though it's, you know, like this, it's too top heavy, or it's too, a lot of them you'll see, they tend to balance weight low a little bit, kind of like that letter T being a heavier weight for that vertical because it goes all the way down, it's heavier. Same thing applied way back in the day when they were designing fonts. And then taking those old metal type, the old wooden type, and then digitizing them, they even improve it a little bit more. There's always a little bit of changes from those because they can't find perfect specimens because of age and all that stuff. But yeah, it's a really thought out thing, and this applies to that whole visual balance applies kind of across the board, not to just fonts. You might have a poster with a big block of text on there, and depending on the style of that text and the weight of the text and the color even, sometimes a little bit off center looks more centered than actually centered. And it comes down to experience and gut feeling, and then also just looking at it and zooming out and then zooming in and then going way back and then standing across the room and looking at it and thinking, oh, that needs to go to the left a little bit. And it's all about what looks right, not what is actually perfectly aligned, mathematically correct. So, yeah.
Cool. So kind of with that thought of what looks right, you know, you and I have had a lot of sort of joking conversations looking at different web pages and other designs, because you know, and I'll say it here for the video record, but you are not just my friend, you're also my designer.
Right.
Every piece of you know, business design I've had done, I think, has been by you. So and so yeah, we've kind of looked at other web pages and things and seen stuff that, you know, we get to have a good laugh over, like, oh, look, there's papyrus again.
Yeah.
You know, but with the use of fonts, do you feel like, you know, even those fonts like Papyrus and Comic Sans that are much maligned, do you feel like there's a use and a place for those purposefully?
Yeah, there always is. And you know, they really get it. I can't remember who it is, but a famous designer said there's no bad fonts. You know, we can say, oh, that's terrible, that's awful, but they have their use and they have their purpose. They get a bad rap because they are so misused and overused. If you're a real estate agent and you're typing an email to a client and it's a business email, don't set it in Comic Sans. That if you're a kindergarten teacher and you're setting up something for the kids to read, or instruction sheet or a sign on the wall, then yeah, use Comic Sans. That's what it's kind of there for. In fact, that's what it was designed for. It was designed by a guy at Microsoft to replace Times New Roman in a piece of kids software. A little doggy with his little speech bubble would come up, and it was all set in Times New Roman. And you know, how dull is that? And so he designed Comic Sans to be used in that application. I don't know the extent of Papyrus, but again, it just comes down to accessibility to the masses. This is like default system fonts for Windows, and so people see them and think, oh, that's really cool, and I'm gonna look quirky, or I'm gonna look friendlier, or whatever it is they may be thinking, but they don't see how, or they don't notice how overused it is. And when you have oversaturation of anything, then it just kind of becomes either a joke, or it becomes totally unnoticed as being what their intent is. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of hard to put into words, but yeah, it's like anything else with oversaturation. And so yeah, there's a place for Papyrus. I don't know that it's Avatar or or things like that, but boy, yeah, all those tea room health spas and massage places that use Papyrus really need if they want to differentiate and stand out, they need to do some more visual research, you know. so yeah. They're, I don't hate them, but I definitely hate the misuse of them and overuse.
Okay.
So,
Cool. Well, yeah, I think that's it for questions for me. So if anybody wants to follow up with what you're doing, what you're up to, do you have a website or anything else that you want to mention where people can find you?
Right now, LeightonMoon.com. Type it in, put in a little overlay. I don't know. LEIGHTON -moon.com. And that's my partner and my design agency. There's not much on the website. The Cobbler's, what is it? Cobbler's Kids Have No Shoes. And so we need to work on our website, but there is a little bit of a portfolio there. And I think there's some stuff of yours in there, actually. And so, but yeah, check it out.
Okay. Again, Cam, thank you so much for your time and your passion and your knowledge today. Thank you very much for sharing. And again, Leighton-moon.com if people want to find you.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later.